feet are going to be about hip distance apart, pointed forward as much as you can. And when you squat down, you are keeping some openness in the knees against the band resistance. So sit back. Good. Exhaling on the way up. Keeping that rib over pelvis position. Your spine is nice and long. You're opening through the sit bones and rising up through the sit bones. Pushing to the ground to come back up. So I want you to get your weight onto your left foot, and with the right foot, we're going to pull up into this high march position. But I want you to think about using that deep core to pull it up. So make sure your lower ribs are tucked in, your ribs are over your pelvis, and you're moving with intention. You're not shifting your body weight back and forward. Make sure it's grounded down through that midfoot. You're just using your hip to come up. Think about pulling from the knee. Good. You should feel your low back be broad. We're not having a big arch in our low back. So with control. Breathing big here, because it's a lot of resistance. Feel this coming up and in. Good. Nice and tall. Collarbones are broad. Okay, all I want you to do is we have some resistance on the band, so your feet are about hip distance apart, and we are just going to align, zip up, and breathe from our inner core, and we're just gonna rock. So you're just rocking, your weight shifting side to side, little bit of abduction in that hip. Just try to keep your legs open. And remember your posturing, ribs over pelvis, lower ribs tucked in, we're knitted from here to here, and we're wrapped, pulled up on the pubic bone. First one is we're just going to shift our weight into our left leg, but not sloppily. We're thinking about that growing to the ceiling, and then we're just gonna isolate the right leg out to the side. Go against your resistance. Depending on your band, you may have a much smaller range of motion than me, depending on how much resistance is in your band. But think about leading with that heel. Okay, don't turn the toes out. So you're almost keeping the toes turned a little bit like a penguin. Again, zipping up through here, making sure we're not sloppy and open. We're zipped up, almost like a 45-degree lean forward, and we're kicking straight back from our heel. Keeping again the lower ribs tucked in, everything in a line, little pull up on that pubic bone. Okay, now just the ceiling is too low. So you're just gonna crouch walk to the side. Breathe however you want to here, just make sure you're not holding your breath. You can twist with it, or you can just keep your hands in a prayer position. Twisting, gotta find your coordination. But you're keeping those knees open, the point of it, keeping the knees open. You're leading from the knees. If you let your knees tuck in, you're not gonna be using the right muscles. So lead from the knees. So push out through your hip. Push, 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 push. Same thing when you step, you're gonna step a little bit out to the side. Monster walks. So we're keeping some resistance on that band. Step out to the side. Now backward. Backward is really good. When you go walk backwards in your life, makes us use different muscles, which this is all about. Make sure you're breathing, but I don't care how you're breathing with the exhales, on what step. That doesn't matter. Just don't hold your breath. Good. Think about your positioning. Nice long neck. Okay, we're going to do some clams with the bands. So come on down onto your side and have the mini resistance band around your knees. And we are going to align your heels in line with your hips, in line with your shoulders. We're right on your side, so those hip bones are stacked, ribs are stacked, lower ribs are tucked in. Make sure we don't have a big arch in our back. And before you even start, engage through that lower belly. So kind of think about lifting away from the ground. So we're not just flopped into the ground, we're lifted up away from the ground. Okay, ankles are together. Rest your head, and you're gonna open just your knees against the resistance. So you're not gonna roll back to do it. You're gonna keep this engaged. And on your exhale, you're just opening. Good. So come, put it around your knees, and you're gonna come up onto your hands and knees, thinking about the good pillars of this position. So your hands are grounded down through all the knuckles, including your pointer finger and thumb. Your elbows are pointed forward, shoulders are down away from your ears, chest and lower ribs are lifted, head is not here, it's up, kind of a double chin, okay? Sit bones are open to the back wall, but you have that little pull on your pubic bone. Okay, so already you're working hard just being here. And now we are going to bring your knee, we're gonna sneak it out of there. So when you lift your leg, don't let your hips shift. Okay, so you're keeping this position, you're pushing away from the floor. Then we are going to kick up to the sky. Keeping that lower deep core turned on. You shouldn't be arching your back at all when you come up. You're keeping those lower ribs up, everything in a line, and you're just isolating the motion at your hip. Make sure you feel your inner thigh working too. Make sure your hip's not rotated out to the side, but that foot is going straight up to the air. Get a little more away from the floor, check in with your neck. Okay, we're gonna do bridging with our band around our knees. And for this, you can have your feet elevated on a step if you have one, or you can just be on the ground as so. So first thing with bridges is to make sure you've got your good alignment. So your lower ribs, when you lie down, are not flared up. Lower ribs are down in line with your pelvis, a little bit of a pull on that pubic bone so you can feel your low back broad into the ground without tucking. And we're gonna ground down through your whole foot, but we're gonna push up through your heels. And we're gonna keep that resistance on the band. So make sure you have a band that gives you a resistance without having to be way out to the side. You want your legs aligned, but just some resistance pulling you together, so you have to pull apart. Okay, so think about your alignment. You're gonna come straight up into a bridge. Now when you're at the top of your bridge, make sure that pubic bone is the highest point. You're not arching from your ribs or your back. You're keeping those ribs tucked in, pubic bone up. And then you're coming straight down through your hips, hip bones, and straight up. Keep that resistance on the band. And when you push through the ground, make sure the inner border of your feet are in contact with the ground. It's easy to want to roll out and roll through your heels. You are pushing through your heels, but your whole foot is in contact with the ground. Good. So you can do full pumps, exhaling on the way up, pulling and zipping up through your pelvis. Think about your pubic bone, your inner thighs working, coming straight up. Now pause at the top. Keep that resistance open, and then small pumps. Think about your positioning. So you should be using just your glutes. Think about those sit bones going straight up. Actually, not even straight up. Kind of towards the top of the wall where it meets the ceiling. So we're coming this way. Pubic bone highest point. Okay, so those are little pumps. Now pause at the top. Now we're going to do clams. Open those against the resistance. Keep everything on. Zipped up. Exhaling on the exertion. Good. Make sure your neck is relaxed, shoulders are relaxed. All the work is being done by pushing down through your feet and lifting up through your hips. Good. And then slowly come down. Great.